Yeah, we got a foot of snow.
Ooh, yep. Don't have that out here.
Okay, so this is our intro to exercise science class. It's the first class they take as a first-year student. We have strength and conditioning, physical therapy, chiropractic, and athletic training students. Those are kind of the big topic areas that they are looking at going into.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Hey, everyone. As Greg said, my name is Bailey. I'm a strength conditioning coach here at Arizona State University. I'm in my 8th year currently. I work with women's lacrosse, beach volleyball, and women's gymnastics out here. I've also worked with softball and women's tennis, among the other sports that I've worked with here. So have a lot of experience working with a lot of different teams. I'm also our facility supervisor out here, so I'm also in charge of, the facility budget, equipment, scheduling, overseeing the other strength coaches that are out here at the facility as well. So I have some administrative duties as well on top of my coaching duties, so keeps me really busy. So kind of how I got into strength conditioning. I didn't really kind of get into strength conditioning till later in my career or into my college career anyway. I originally went to undergrad with the hopes of becoming an orthopedic surgeon. But as soon as I took organic chemistry, I realized that being a doctor was for me. So kind of pivoted a little bit and wanted to do the PT route. Kind of majored in exercise science, did all those classes in undergrad, kind of figured I was going to do PT because I had an injury early in my collegiate career. I was a softball player at Creighton University and kind of went through the rehab process through physical therapy and thought that might be kind of a cool career to go into. I really enjoyed it. Put the exercise science classes I take into practice. But my senior year in undergrad, I did an internship at a PT clinic and realized that a lot more geriatric patients, a lot more kind of general population. I didn't get to work with a ton of athletes. And to me, it was kind of boring. It was a lot of the same things over and over and over again. So that's when I kind of decided that PT wasn't going to be the route for me. So that's when I kind of started looking into strength conditioning a little bit more. I had some good strength coaches when I was in college as an athlete, so it piqued my interest on top of the exercise science classes that I had taken and just kind of how the human body works and moves. And I'd always enjoyed working out when I was an athlete and growing up and things like that. So I thought this might kind of be the path for me. So ended up kind of shadowing my college, kind of the last semester of my senior year and then I ended up taking some internships. I volunteered at the spring semester after I graduated in 2009. And I got to work with Nebraska's volleyball team there as well as their softball team and work under the strength coaches at Nebraska. So I really learned a lot. And then from there, I did another internship out here at Arizona State University working with men's and women's basketball and baseball. So I got more experience with not only teams that I had never really worked with before, but also at different schools. So I got to learn under the Arizona strength coaches out here. And then for that internship, then I decided I was going to go ahead and go get my master's. So I went to University of Nebraska. I got my master's degree there while I was working as a graduate assistant at Creighton University. So I got to work with women's rowing team there, and women's tennis, as well as softball and volleyball. So we got a lot of practice working with my own teams, programming on my own, having to meet with coaches and go over practice and all those kinds of things. So it was a lot of good experience for me. And that's kind of when I really realized that that's what I wanted to do for my career. So once I graduated with my master's, I ended up going into the private sector for a while because collegiate strength and conditioning jobs are pretty tough to come by. So I went to the private sector just to continue to work on gaining experience and just staying in the field. So I went to work with Peterson Sports Performance in Lincoln, Nebraska. So there I worked with a bunch of different type of clientele. I worked with general population people. I worked with a bunch of athletes that were like middle school to high school range. variety of different sports. So again, it kind of helps keep me sharp and get a lot of experience working with a lot of different sports one-on-one. Kind of really helped hone my coaching skills. Because it's easy to coach an athlete when they're already like super athletic, you're top of the line kids. You really find out what you're made of as a coach when you have to work with a kid that doesn't know how to squat. They're still growing in their bodies. They're going through puberty. Their movements are all over the place. So again, really good experience that early in my career, trying to, just help hone my coaching skills so that by the time I got this job, which was 18, I had kind of seen a little bit of everything. I worked with a ton of different athletes, kind of a ton of different kinds of people. And so when I got out here, originally started working with softball and women's tennis out here, and then ended up moving into gymnastics and tennis, and then moved into beach volleyball with gymnastics and tennis, and then kind of switched around a little bit as well. To this year, I picked up women's lacrosse, but I also have beach volleyball and gymnastics now. So, like I said, I've kind of worked with a bunch of different kinds of variety of sports, a lot of different experiences. I've kind of worked my way up the ladder administratively. So, yeah, it's been a rewarding career so far. Teams that I work with, still learning every day from the coaches that are out here. So yeah, that's kind of my journey within strength and conditioning. So I guess I'll turn it over to you guys if you guys have any questions. Anything else that you want to know?
No questions.
How was it like going between all the different sports and like having did you struggle at all like having to learn about like new sports and kind of how to tailor your program to like have like maybe different like muscle groups that they use more, like different injuries that like certain athletes have based on sports?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't super difficult because again, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to be around the sport a little bit. So when I first found out I was taking over lacrosse, for example, didn't really know much about the sport. It's not a big sport in the Midwest, so I hadn't really had a lot of experience with it. So you kind of just program kind of some general movements to start with. And then as you go out to practice, learn about the sport, read books, things like that, talk with other lacrosse strength and conditioning coaches across the country, which is what I did. And just kind of did my due diligence that way as far as, the kind of different movements that you're going to need to train for their sport. So I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it's definitely one of those things where you kind of have to really sit down and do needs analysis, where you look at the sport itself, the different kind of movements that they do. They have a lot of bending, cutting, change of direction, rotational things when they shoot, when they pass, all those kinds of things. And so in your head, if you work with softball, it's a horizontal rotation. You can kind of use those same exercises of lacrosse. So again, you kind of just have to think about similarities with maybe worked with, talking with the coaches, talking with other strength coaches that have worked with the sport, things like that. And then with athletic trainers and discussing injuries that they had seen in years past and just common injuries in the sport, things like that. So that's kind of how I learn and program and, kind of helps me train different sports when you're kind of moving from sports similar. So obviously like beach volleyball, different energy systems when it comes to conditioning, different lift styles, things like that. Yeah, it's kind of just, you just have to do diligence and research a little bit. But my philosophy when it comes to training is I keep meat and potatoes the same across the board. So all of my sports are going to squat, we're going to hinge, we're going to push, we're going to pull, and then add in single leg exercises. And then you can kind of throw in some of the more specific type things in like their accessory blocks or in warm up, things like that. So I'm not a huge only doing sport specific things because they're going to get those types of movements when they play their sport. So what I need to do in the weight room, or what I tend to focus on in the weight room, is let's build good general athleticism and build good general athletes, make sure they're strong, they're powerful, they're in condition, and then they get true sports specificity when they actually play their sport, if that makes sense.
What type of equipment do you use at Arizona State to like see progression and like gaining and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we have some technological things out here that we use to kind of track progress. One of them is our dynamic force plates. So what these force plates kind of look at is we can look at their power, strength, we can look at limb asymmetries, we can look at their force production. There's a lot of different metrics that we can kind of look at. And so what I typically do with my sports is I jump them weekly. And so we just do a counter movement jump because that's going to kind of be the most basic test to do on there. It's going to tell me a lot. So I will look at those things as far as we progress through different kinds of phases with their lifting and their conditioning. And then as the numbers, kind of track over time, I can kind of see like, okay, are we on a downward trend here? Are we on an upward trend? Is the training working? Things like that. And then based on what their numbers are, that kind of tells me if the training's working or not. And then if it is, we kind of just moving forward. If it's not, we stop, we reassess, kind of program a little bit. So that's one of the ways that I kind of track their progress. We also have what's called gym awares. So what that is anybody familiar with like a Tendo unit, like bar speed tracking type technology things? So gym aware is kind of another step up of that. So I can look at a bunch of different things with that as well. So let's say, for example, we're doing hang cleans. I can track their speed, their power with the different weights as they progress through that. So that'll kind of tell me what certain weights they're using, how much power are they producing at those certain weights. So if there's a certain weight that they're really producing a lot of power with, that, and then just manipulate their volume. And there's also, things that we can look at as well. We can use squats. We can use those with deadlifts. There's a bunch of lifts for those. So again, data that's collected within sessions goes to a cloud, and then I can go back and look and kind of track their progress over time through that. So that's kind of another way. Progress basically weekly, like throughout like an off season or an in season. And then I just do like your standard, like we do a vertical jump test, like with beach volleyball, for example. We do a chin up test. We do so I do have just general like strength that we do all that we beginning of the semester to show progression. I'm a big max testing person. I just don't think the sports that I have in particular that the risk is worth the reward. Now, if you're working with a bigger, more strength-related sport such as football, men's basketball, women's basketball to a certain extent, I know a lot of strength coaches that I do max testing with those. But I just feel like there's other ways that you can do or track progress rather than just doing straight RM testing. Good question.
Any other questions? Bryce.
Do you see a difference in like 1 rep max compared to like multiple reps to get to your 1 rep max? If that makes sense.
As far as do I see a difference in like the weight moved, or I guess can you clarify a little bit better?
Did like a 1 rep max compared to like a 3 to 8 rep max. Like 8 is your max reps. Do you see a difference in like speed and power?
I mean, yes, you're going to see a difference in speed and power, because if you think about like if you do your own training, like depending on what you're on, like your speed and your power on your 8th rep compared to your maybe 1st or 2nd or 3rd rep is going to be a lot probably slower, and your power is going to be down on the 8th rep. So if I were to do like rep testing like that, I would probably go like a 3 rep max. Because I think that's going to give you a good idea of max strength, as well as like their power is going to be probably a lot better. Their speed is going to be a lot better than trying to do 8 reps.
Good. What's your typical day?
Depends on the day. A lot of long hours depending on days and team schedules and things like that. So my typical day with this fall here, My days would usually start between like 6:30 and 7. Lacrosse typically lifted in the mornings, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7:30 to 8:30. And then they would immediately go from lift out to practice at 9 a.m. And so I would warm them up for practice. And then on certain days we would have speed work and agility practice. So I would do that with them for about 15 to 20 minutes. Tuesdays were typically my longer days. So I had beach volleyball conditioning at 6:30 in the morning, and then I had lacrosse conditioning at around 9. And then I would have gymnastics head lift at 4:15. So that was kind of my Thursdays. So depending on the teams you work with, schedules, you can work some long hours. That's kind of one of the, I guess you could say, downfalls of this job is that it's a grind. Most days, depending on how many teams you have, facilities you're at, what level, if it's CIA, JUCO, etc. But if you can get past the long hours, it's actually really rewarding profession. But I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of long days. You don't, depending on the teams you work with, you might not get a ton of holiday breaks. Like if you're working with basketball or football, typically not going to get a huge Thanksgiving break. You're not going to get a huge Christmas break. You might not get a spring break. You know what I mean? It just kind of depends on the teams you work with. So there is a little bit of work-life imbalance. Again, it just kind of depends on where you're at in your career. Some have better balance than others. But don't want to lie to you guys and make sure paint sunshine and rainbows. There can be some long days, but as long as you enjoy the coaching, it's worth it. So.
Do you get to travel with the team since you do all their warm-up stuff like pre-practice and stuff?
I'll travel a little bit, typically with lacrosse and beach volleyball. I don't do any travel with gymnastics. I usually only go on like the longer trips for those sports. So let's say they've got like a longer, for beach volleyball, for example, they have like longer tournaments sometimes that go like Wednesday to Sunday. So I'll typically travel with them on one of those trips just because we'll probably do a lift on the road on those longer trips. Obviously, I warm them up. We do some post-match cool-down work. We'll do some recovery stuff at the hotels after a day or two. So we'll do some pool flushes, band stretching, mobility. So typically I'll travel with them, get some good recovery, and then usually a good training session in there. Same with lacrosse. This kind of depends on if they've got multiple games, depending on conference, they might have, they're gone a week where they go, to the East Coast and have a couple games out there. Then they come back out here to the West Coast and have a game there. So just kind of depends on the tournament schedule. But there is a little bit of travel involved. If you're working with a football or a basketball, there's going to be a lot more travel because typically you're the only strength coach for those sports. So you go with them everywhere. You do all those things. You're on the bench. That's just kind of the optics of, at least at the D1 level. So.
Since we have so many different professions, what's like a piece of advice you could give that a student could use going into any profession?
I would say try to do as much volunteering, shadowing, internships as you can, depending on what area you're going into. In strength conditioning, internships, volunteering are huge because it's a good way to be around the profession without having kind of a big commitment to it. It's a good way for you to kind of test and see if it's truly what you want to do. I know like with our interns here and our volunteers here, like depending on their class schedule, outside of their class schedule, they're expected to be here as long as we have teams on the floor. So again, you might be working, 10, 12 hours as an intern. But if you show a lot of initiative and, do a good job, you're a big help, all those kinds of things. It's a good way to get good recommendations should you choose to pursue a career in the profession. But then there's some people that, they get into it, they do an internship or they do some volunteering and they're like, you know what, this is not for me. And so that's a good way to really kind of finalize that this is something that you definitely want to do. So no matter what profession you're going into, I always highly recommend doing any sort of volunteering, shadowing, internships if you can, because it's going to give you a good taste of a little bit of everything that you're going to see in whatever profession you choose to go into.
What's your favorite sport you've worked with?
Ooh. It's a toss up. I would say beach volleyball because I get to go to a lot of cool places that actually have beaches. So like this, actually the week before Thanksgiving, I traveled to Hawaii, or traveled with beach volleyball to Hawaii for a tournament there. And they were literally playing on the beach in Hawaii. So I would say they're probably my favorite in terms of travel. But I would say favorite in terms of watch is probably lacrosse.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But I love all my teams equally.
Any other questions?
Nothing?
Tiago has one.
What would you say is the favorite part of your job?
Working with the athletes every day. Don't get me wrong, like there's times where these college kids, they can drive you nuts. You're working with a lot of different personalities, depending on the team you're working with. And now with the NIL and the rev share era going on in college athletics, I get some prima donnas depending on the sport, aka football, basketball. But I'd say my favorite part is just working with the athletes and being able to impact their lives. Not just physically, like getting them ready for their sport, but also I think a big coach's job that's not talked about enough is being mentors and life coaches. As a strength coach, you're going to be around the athletes a lot more than the sport coaches are, a lot more than, their parents are going to be around. So you're kind of their go-to support system sometimes, especially if the kids, far away from home. They just don't, trust a lot of people, whatever it is. So a lot of times athletes are going to confide in strength coaches a lot of times. And we know a lot of stuff that sometimes we don't want to know. But it's rewarding to be able to be that kind of a life coach and support system and mentor for these kids, because I can't tell you how many times I get text messages or emails a couple years later after some of the athletes have graduated saying hey, I just want to really thank you for everything you did. Everything you taught me to move on and get this job. I just feel like I'm prepared for life because of everything that you taught me and impacted me on and things like that. So that's kind of the best part, is you get those success stories that really keep you going and just show that you do have an impact on these kids more than you really think you do.
Can you go over kind of staff, the strength conditioning staff at Arizona State?
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit. What was that?
Can you go over kind of the staff and like the Department of Strength Conditioning at Arizona State?
Yeah, so we actually have a pretty big staff here at ASU. We've got 26 sports that we cover. So we actually have 9 full-time strength coaches. We have men's basketball and women's basketball have their own, and baseball has their own, but everybody else that's on staff is divided up amongst the other 26 sports or the other 23 sports. Football has their own separate staff, so they're not included with us, and that's pretty typical at the D1 level. So every person on staff here usually has 2 to 3, maybe 4 sports, kind of depending on the size. And I think we have a really good mix of female and male. A male-dominated profession. There's a lot of females that are really being successful in getting a profession and really diversifying staffs. So I'd say we have a really good collaborative staff out here. We have a good range of people that have been in the profession only a few years versus our director who's been in this profession for 20 some years. And so I think everybody's able to learn from everybody, and that's kind of what you want in this profession, because not everybody knows everything. And if you think you do, then you're not going to press and be as good of a coach as you can be. So we don't have a typical size for D1 strength conditioning. Typically, most staffs will be maybe 5 to 6 people. So we're fortunate that we do have a big staff, so our workload isn't as crazy. But there are areas out there, like if you were to be D2, D3, NAIA, you may have 1 or 2 people on staff amongst, 10 to 15 sports. So it just kind of depends on where you're at.
What's the job market like?
It's tougher now that the whole rev share and NIL is fully in place. A lot of universities, unfortunately, are having to look at places to cut as far as budgets and things like that. And unfortunately, athletic training, sometimes kind of the support staff, some of the professions that unfortunately get cut first. So that's why I said earlier, doing internships, volunteering, becoming GAs, all those things is going to be really good because that way you have connections and you have networking from those positions to then help you get a full-time job in a very tight job market. Typically with strength and conditioning, a lot of times through the networking, a lot of times schools going to hire before they post the job. They just have to post it. So that's why the more people that know you, the more strength coaches that know you, the better off you're going to be when it comes to interviews and possibly getting hired, because there's always a 6 degrees of separation, right? Like this strength coach knows this strength coach knows this strength coach at this school. So, talk, and that's kind of how everybody helps each other get hired on. So that's why get your name out there and the best you can, network as best you can, so that this will be kind of the best opportunity to get your name, at least in front of the people that are making the hire, a lot better. So.
Any other questions? Very good. All right, give Bailey a hand. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys. If you think of any other questions or anything, Greg has my contact info. Don't hesitate to reach out. Always willing to help out anybody just trying to get into the profession. We want to get more people in here. So, yeah, don't be shy.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.